Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Bureau for Private Post-Secondary Education's November Advisory Committee meeting. First, we are going to take roll call so we can establish a quorum. Moderator, can you help me with that, Sarah? Sorry, I shouldn't call you Sarah, not moderator.
That's fine. One moment. Can we switch to the second slide with the... All right. Leigh Farron.
Present.
Tess Craker.
Present.
Robert Boykin.
Present.
Kinson Chu. Melanie Delgado.
Present.
Joseph Holt.
Present.
Robin Smith. Robin Smith.
Sorry. Oops. Trying to figure this out. Okay.
No worries.
Thank you.
Tracy Tambaskia. Senator Angelique Ashby. Present, and Assemblymember Mike Fong. All right, and I think that's everyone.
Okay, thank you. So with 6, we have a quorum. So thank you. As usual, I just want to do a few introductions and kind of business items, and then we will move into the agenda. So under the this meeting will be run according to the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act.
Did we just lose her?
I believe so. One second. I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording and see if we can get her reconnected.
I'm here. I just got moved to attendees for a minute. I heard a little beep.
Apologies.
That's okay. Luckily, I didn't keep going for too long after.
Okay, let me go ahead and hit the record button, resume recording, and then you can go ahead.
Sounds good. Thanks.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, I'm just going to start over just to make sure that I got it all. I didn't get that far. So today's meeting will be run according to the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act and the Brown Act. Under the Bagley-Keene rules, advisory committee members are required to visibly appear on camera during this meeting. If you're unable to be visible for reasons of technological impracticability, please announce the reason for your non-appearance when you turn off your camera. Since this meeting is being conducted via WebEx, please try to remember to announce yourselves by name before speaking, just for clarity of the record. You are able to unmute themselves. All advisory committee members are able to unmute yourself to speak during the meeting. Please put yourself back on mute when not speaking so that we can reduce background noise. We will ensure that all comments from advisory committee members and speakers are heard before proceeding. The advisory committee welcomes public comments on any item on the agenda, and the committee will ask for public comments on each agenda item prior to any potential action being taken. The moderator will help us with public comments both in person in the room and also on the WebEx event. And instructions will be given about how to make the public comment at the appropriate time. When called upon, the host will unmute the microphone of the person making the public comment, and they will have 3 minutes to make their public comment. Once the 3 minutes have passed, the individual will be placed back on mute. 1 public comment per agenda item is allowed per attendee. let's see. We do have our during agenda item 2, which is public comments for items not on the agenda. We've limited the total public comment time to 30 minutes total. Public comment on any other item is limited to 20 minutes total, but it's still a 3-minute limit for any individual participant. One important note about public comment is that the advisory committee and staff are not able to respond to public comments. So if there is a question, the best way to submit the question is to the email address at bppe@dca.ca.gov. We will not be able to respond in chat or in the meeting directly verbally to any questions that are raised by public comment speakers. Let's see. I think that is the practical stuff for the meeting. I think with that and with the forum, we can move on to item number 2, which is public comment on items not on the agenda. So we will open the queue for public comments. Again, just remember, this is not a discussion between advisory committee members and the public. The only action the advisory committee can do is to listen to comments and decide whether or not we would want to make this a future agenda item. No other action can be taken on the item at this particular meeting. And again, if you have a question, you can submit it via email to bppe@dca.ca.gov. So comments at this time are for items that are not on today's agenda. Moderator, will you help me by opening public comment for item 2, public comments not on the agenda, for items not on the agenda?
This is the moderator, and we are now open for public comment for agenda item 2, items not on the agenda. If you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the raise hand icon at the bottom of your WebEx screen, or if you're an audio-only participant, you may press *3 on your device to raise your hand. You may also use the Q&A feature to indicate that you would like to make public comment. And then I will pause a moment to see if anyone would like to make public comment. All right, and it appears there are no requests. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure, do we have an in-person component today too, or do we just have the WebEx meeting?
I apologize. We should probably ask the Eldorado room as well. And for the Eldorado room, are there any public present who would like to make public comment?
There are no public currently
Thank you.
in the room.
Thank you very much. Okay, we can close the public comment and move on to agenda item 3, which is the review and approval of the August 20th, 2024 Advisory Committee meeting minutes. Any advisory committee members have any corrections or comments on the minutes? Hearing none. Is there, I always forget which order I do this. I'm really sorry. Motion first and then public comment, or public comment and then motion? I think.
This is the moderator. I would probably ask legal counsel first, but I believe for other programs it's usually motion, then public comment.
That was what I was expecting. All right, does anyone have a motion to approve the August 20th, 2024 Advisory Committee meeting minutes?
This is Tess Kraker. I'll make a motion to approve.
Thanks, Tess.
Delgado, I'll second that motion.
Thanks, Melanie. All right. Then we need to go through the vote. So I can do that. I'll just call myself too.
I'm sorry, Lee.
Yes.
I think last time we did public comment before the vote, or before even the motion. Last time.
Okay, thank you. I was hoping for. That's fine with me. I don't. That feels like it makes more sense anyway. Okay, so let's hold that motion and second. We'll come back to it. Let's go open it up for public comment. Anyone wishing to make a public comment on agenda item 3, review and approval of the August 20th, 2024 advisory committee meeting minutes. Please follow the instructions on the screen.
All right, this is the moderator. Once again, we have open public comment for agenda item 3. If you would like to make a comment, you can use the raise hand icon, or you can use the Q&A feature down at the bottom of your WebEx screen. It looks like we do have one request from an audio-only participant. Call-in user 5, I'll request to unmute your microphone. You'll press *6 on your device, and you'll be given 3 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning. All right, I'll request to unmute your microphone now.
Hello, good morning. Actually, I was trying to make a public comment on agenda item number 2.
This is the moderator. Let me ask our committee and legal if they want to go back to that item, or if we should finish this one and then go back.
Let's
Thank you.
finish.
Okay.
Let's finish the agenda. As long as legal counsel says that's fine, I would suggest we just finish up the minutes and then we can go back to agenda item 2. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, it's up to the chair, however she wishes to do it.
Okay, I would rather just get through this agenda item, but we will go back to item 2. So just give us like a couple of minutes.
All right, calling user 5. I'm going to mute you again, but I'll leave your hand raised so we know to go back. All right. And it appears for agenda item 3, there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you. Okay, so going back to, sorry for the confusion. It always takes me a minute to remind myself and get started. So thanks for your patience. So going back, we have a no public comment. We have a motion by Tess and a second by Melanie. We can go through the vote. So Lee Farron, myself, I, Tess,
Aye.
Robert,
Aye.
Kenson is not here. Melanie,
Aye.
Joseph,
Aye.
Robin,
Aye.
and Tracy is also not here. Okay, thank you. That is 6-0. The minutes from the August meeting are approved. All right, we will return to agenda item 2 for the public comment on items not on the agenda and listen to the public comment.
I will go back to our call-in user 5, and I'll request to unmute your microphone again. You'll want to press *6 on your device in order to unmute.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for allowing me to go back to make the public comment. My name is Caitlin Barron. I am a law student at University of San Diego, and I was recently researching the amount of money that private schools receive in Cal Grant funds. And unfortunately, this information is not publicly available in a published report by the California Student Aid Commission. The Cradle to Career dashboard is not up and running yet, which would have this information. The Development Workforce Report does not contain this Cal Grant information. And BPPE does request in the school's annual reports the amount of money that the school receives through public funds and the total amount from each fund as part of its annual report. And I was wanting to request that this information be posted in the school's annual report summary, similar to how the funding from Veterans Student Aid is published in the annual report summaries. This would allow the public and students to see which schools are receiving Cal Grant funds, which private schools receive millions of dollars in Cal Grant funds per year. And these funds are for lower income students or students receiving career and technical training. And I think this would really help the BPPE in their mission of information and transparency. So that way students and parents and researchers can take a look and see which schools are receiving larger amounts in Cal Grant funds to make sure that we are appropriately funding these private institutions. And so I would ask that you take a look at the feasibility for publishing this information. It shouldn't cause much of a burden onto the agency since you already collect it. And it may help you reduce your workload if anyone were to request this information from you at a later date. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment. All right, since we reopened it, any other comments on agenda item 2?
This is the moderator. It appears there are no further comments.
Okay. And because, then we will close agenda item 2. Thank you. Because I believe we might lose our quorum at 11 is what I understand. We need to go a little bit out of order in the agenda items, and we need to go to elections because we need a quorum for that. And everything else I think we should be okay with in terms of voting. So we're up for our annual elections for chair and vice chair of the committee. And I don't actually, let's see. So I guess basically we need to decide if anyone would like to nominate themselves for chair or vice chair. The chair, both positions are eligible for people to serve for 2 years. I am finishing my first year, so I'm willing to stay on for a second year if folks decide to vote me in. And then Tess, you're currently serving as the vice chair. So if you are willing to stay on as vice chair, we have those two as possibilities. But if anyone else would like to nominate themselves or someone else, they are welcome to do that.
I'm also willing to stay on or step aside if there's somebody that would like to also, but I'm very happy to stay on too.
Thanks, Tess. Any advisory committee members? Any other nominations?
I don't have a nomination, but I have a strong endorsement for our current chair and vice chair. I think you're both doing great.
Thanks, Jesse. As I stumble through the agenda, it's always appreciated. Okay, then I think we can vote.
And we probably need to, we'll need to go to public comment, but Richie can help with the roll call and the vote when we get to there.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so let's go to public comment for item 10, which is chair and vice chair elections. The current nominees are myself for chair for 1 more year and Tess. Tess, do you say it Craker? Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you so
and
much.
Tess Craker for vice chair. So we will go to public comment for item 10.
All right, this is the moderator. If you would like to make a public comment on this item, agenda item 10, you may click the raise hand icon, or if you're an audio only participant, press *3 on your device to raise your hand. You may also use the Q&A feature to indicate that you would like to make public comment. All right, and seeing no requests for public comment, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. So we will move to voting. The one question, can we vote together or do we need to vote separately on chair and vice chair? I see nodding. Okay.
Separate, yeah.
Okay, so first, let's vote on the chair nomination, which this is always awkward, but is me. So Richie, can you walk us through the vote, please?
Yes, so Lee Farron,
I feel like I abstained from voting for myself.
Tess Craker,
Yes.
Robert Boykin,
Yes.
Melanie Delgado,
Yes.
Joseph Hope,
Yes.
Robin Smith.
Yes.
All right, thank you. And then we'll move to vote on vice chair for Tess Craker.
Lee Farron,
Yes.
Tess Craker,
Yes.
Joseph Hope,
Yes.
Robert Boykin,
Yes.
Melanie Delgado,
Yes.
Robin Smith.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. Y'all got us for another year. And thank you all for being willing to go out of order just to make sure we can get that vote in. All right. We will move on to agenda item 4, which is remarks by a representative of the Department of Consumer Affairs.
And we have Karina Moreno joining us for that.
Morning, my name is Karina Moreno of the California Department of Consumer Affairs. I thank you for the opportunity to join me today. And I'd like to thank all of the members who serve to protect the public. First is a DEI update. DCA's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Steering Committee met last month, and we are excited to announce its newly elected leadership. Reggie Varghese from Medical Board of California's Executive Director will serve as chair, and Marlon McManus, the Board of Behavioral Sciences Assistant Executive Officer, will serve as vice chair. With Reggie and Marlon's years of experience and sincere commitment, we greatly look forward to accomplishing many DEI initiatives under their leadership. Next is new unconscious bias training for board members. I'm also excited to share that DCA is updating its current unveiling unconscious bias training to specifically focus on board and committee members, your critical roles, and how unconscious bias can affect your decision-making authority. The training will be self-paced and available in DCA's online learning management system, LMS. We anticipate launching this new training in early 2025, and board and committee members will be required to take it annually. As a reminder, DCA offers over 20 online DEI training courses in its learning management system. While these courses are not mandatory, board and committee members and leaders are strongly encouraged to take these trainings as you are instrumental in leading department-wide change. Military Licensing Resource Webinar. To support and maximize outreach to our military community, DCA is hosting a second live webinar on November 21st, 2024. To share information about military licensing resources. During the webinar, attendees will learn about licensing resources available to members of the military and their spouses or domestic partners. The webinar will also feature a demonstration of DCA's Federal Professional License Portal and state registration process, which was launched last year, as well as a Q&A session. Webinar details and information will be available at www.dca.ca.gov/military. New Business and Travel Expense Reimbursement Program. The State Department of Human Resources, also known as CalHR, recently released an updated travel policy to align with federal policies outlined by the U.S. General Services Administration. Effective October 1st, 2024, DCA will use the federal standard meal and incidental expense rates for in-state and out-of-state travel. DCA will also use the federal standard and non-standard reimbursement lodging rates. Information on these changes was shared with the committee leaders at the end of September. Board and committee members are encouraged to become familiar with the new travel expense reimbursement program and rates. Please contact Board and Bureau Relations with any questions regarding these changes. Season of Giving. We are officially in a season of giving, and DCA is honored to join in the annual charitable campaigns launching this month. DCA's annual turkey drive, which is currently going on, and the state's Our Promise campaign. Turkey drive. On November 13th, 2024, from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., board and committee members and employees will have the opportunity to give back to the community. DCA will hold its third annual turkey drive with donations benefiting Joey's Food Locker, a local food bank located near DCA's headquarters in Sacramento. Donations of frozen turkeys and non-perishable food items will be accepted at DCA's headquarters, bar headquarters, and the Evergreen Building locations in Sacramento area. For information on how to participate and donate, please contact your executive officer or bureau chief. This item collecting during the event are part of the larger state employees food drive that takes place this time of the year as well. Later in the month, DCA will announce collection box locations for that. Next is the Our Promise campaign launch, State Employees Giving at Work campaign. Every year through the Our Promise California State Employees Charitable Campaign, state employees, including board and committee members, have the opportunity to support the nonprofit causes they are passionate about through payroll giving or one-time donations. These contributions have a positive impact on our communities and is another way for DCA to show it cares for California. This year's campaign is led by Monica Vargas, Deputy Director of Communications, and Karen Navarro, Assistant Deputy Director of Communications. DCA's campaign officially launches on November 18th and runs through December 31st. In the meantime, please contact Board and Bureau Relations with any questions if you would like information on how to give. Again, thank you for the opportunity to join you today. I'm happy to answer any questions from the advisory committee.
Thank you, Karina. Any questions from the advisory committee? Okay, hearing none, we will open up agenda item 4 for public comment.
All right, this is the moderator. If you would like to make public comment on this item, agenda item 4, you can go ahead and click the raise hand icon at the bottom of your WebEx screen, or if you're an audio-only participant, press *3 on your device. You may also use the Q&A feature down at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. All right, and seeing no requests for public comment, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item 5. This is the Bureau Operations update and discussion. And because there is A through H of sub items on item 5, we will take each item and then take public comment after each individual item. So we will start with item 5A, which is the IT system project.
Great. I'm actually going to be giving the first update on this one. I just want to go back a second to make sure. Did we check the El Dorado room?
Oh, I'm sorry.
For public comment?
Apologies, we did not. Can we check if the El Dorado room has any public in attendance there?
There are no public.
All right, thank you.
Present.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so Jason Biccioni is unable to join us today, so I will be giving a very brief and very non-technical IT system project update. The short update is that we are still working very diligently towards an early 2025 conversion to our new system of record, away from Sail to the system that we know as Connect. We're dedicating substantial staff resources to product development and testing. We are hugely grateful. I don't often get the chance to say this because Jason is giving the update, but just hugely grateful to the support we're getting from the Office of Information Services at DCA, and that's both Jason's team and Jason personally. We would just not be making the types of strides that we have been making of late without that team's active engagement and involvement. As we also talked about before at prior meetings, we do have an additional contract in place for additional developer support as well, to just make sure that we're moving as timely as possible to that conversion. So I will say we are still very optimistic about our timelines and making a lot of progress, but I also do want to acknowledge that the priority here from the Bureau standpoint is to get it right and to converting only when we know that we can get it right. So we're spending a lot of time thinking about what that looks like, making sure that at the point of conversion, we'll be able to, house all the data we have, but also extract from this system the data that we need to do our jobs on a daily basis. And ultimately, if we determine that necessitates more time, we will take that additional time. But as of right now, we remain optimistic about that timeline. I do want to share one other update related to data system conversion outside of the technical aspect, because I think it's important that institutions in particular are aware of this. Our goal is a smooth conversion, and our ability to have a smooth conversion relies on our ability to communicate effectively and timely with institutions about that conversion and what it means for them, and what to expect and when. So to that end, we are actually currently reaching out to every approved institution by phone to confirm that we have the right contact information for that institution, that the email address on record would be the right one for getting system-wide updates regarding Connect. So just that we know that it's all up to date. We'll be sending out emails in the coming months regarding updates and instructions. And so we're really optimistic that this project will just really help aid us with a smooth transition. I'm happy to take any questions, hopefully non-technical ones.
Can you just remind us what I know you said you may end up taking more time, but what is the current timeline goal?
We're looking at early 2025. So just around the corner.
Yeah, okay. Any questions or comments from the committee members? Okay. Thank you, Debbie. We will open item 5A, the IT system project, up for public comment. Moderator, can you please help?
All right, this is the moderator. If you would like to make a comment on this agenda item, you can click the raise hand icon, or if you're an audio only participant, you may raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. You may additionally also use the Q&A feature down at the bottom of your WebEx screen. All right, and seeing no requests for public comment, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, I think we just need to confirm that there's nobody in the El Dorado room.
Yes, can we check that there is, if there's any public in the El Dorado room?
There are no public members present.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead. We can go ahead and close the panel and move on to agenda item 5B, which is the licensing unit update.
Morning, everybody. Greg Donkerbrook, licensing chief for the Bureau. Over the last quarter, as we continue to refine and review our processes and procedures, we've also been working on the information available to the public and for prospective institutions. This work includes reviewing materials presented during our monthly licensing workshop, information about the approval process for our webpage, as well as application resources to help guide stakeholders through their application review. We also are continuing our analysis of current data reporting and how we would like that reporting to function as we anticipate the transition to our new system of record in 2025. It's imperative that we use the new system to help drive our decision-making and process refinement to continue making efforts towards streamlining the review process. As always, I welcome suggestions or ideas from the committee on any items they might like to see in the future or reporting from the licensing unit. First slide we have today is a review of our pending applications that reside with the Bureau. A couple of quick things I want to highlight for the committee. In Q1 of this year, we completed 21 more applications than we did of Q1 last year. We were able to adjudicate 60 more applications this quarter than were received during the current quarter. We also total pending applications are down almost 40 from Q1 of last year, while at the same time we've received almost 900 applications in the last 12 months. Our following slide presents our application processing timeframes across all of our applications. This quarter, we saw some positive movement in the reduction of our processing time. Focusing on our non-accredited applications, for our approvals, we averaged 471 days to approval, which is down by almost 90 days from our 12-month average from Q1 of last year. And our non-accredited renewals were at 335 days for this quarter versus our 12-month average of 507. As stated earlier, our process refinement is continuous, and we're working to ensure we're performing accurate and timely reviews of all our applications. The next slide is our locations. You may notice on this slide that our total number of locations shows a reduction in active locations compared to what has been reported in recent years. I wanted to spend a few minutes talking through this, as we are confident this represents the actual active institution population versus what has been previously reported. One challenge with the Bureau's historical system of record sale is that pulling reports from it can be challenging and time-consuming. The licensing unit over many years had developed several workarounds to be able to generate needed data quickly, mostly in the form of manual tracking systems, including a system to generate counts of active institution locations. Unfortunately for the Bureau, the workarounds were not perfect, and those imperfections came into focus, especially as we continue to ready ourselves for the transition to our new system of record. In this specific case, licensing staff would routinely add newly approved institutions to a workaround spreadsheet, but were inconsistent in removing institutions that no longer held approval with the Bureau. Over time, this meant that dozens of closed or exempt institutions and a larger number of locations were erroneously reported as approved in our licensing stats. Over this quarter, we had the opportunity to reconcile that data across all of our tracking and reporting systems to be able to provide this look at the correct number of active institutions. The Bureau is anticipating that this is a one-time correction and is looking forward to being able to utilize new and more accurate reporting and tracking systems resulting from the migration to our new system of record early next year. This report does not impact any other Bureau unit or operations. I would also like to highlight on this slide that we put an infographic on the slide to show that all of our different approval types, other than out-of-state registrations, are included in that main total that you see on the first line. Also, with the non-accredited approvals of 495, that does include 26 institutions that are provisionally approved. Again, if you have any questions at the end, I'd be happy to take those. Slide 5 is our licensing workshops. We continue to see significant increases in the number of registrants and participants. In Q1 of this year, we had almost double the number of registrants and participants as the same time frame last year. We had almost the same amount as participants registrants. In July, we had 50. August, we had 30. In September, we had 41. And then even participants, 33, 22, and 35. I would also like to point out about the workshops that we are working on collecting feedback from our workshop participants, which we hope will allow us to tailor future workshops and possibly shift the amount of focus that we spend on different areas of the application based on that feedback that we receive. And I thank you for your time. I welcome any questions the committee might have.
Thank you, Greg. Any questions or comments from the committee members?
Yes, I have one question. This is Joseph Holt. It might be Greg for you, or maybe Deborah. The a correction to the number of approved institutions through the data reconciliation. Is there any relationship between that correction and the modeling used in the fee study or other revenue projections going forward? Like, what was there a per institution multiplied by number of institution factor in the revenue projections or fee study?
To my knowledge, the data used in the fee study was based off of actual fees that have been collected on an annualized basis, so not representative of the data that had been reported to the committee. So they were actually able to use the actual dollars that have been reported and collected versus the manual tracking and spreadsheets that we were using to give those numbers. So I just want to reemphasize that the actual number of institutions isn't like drastically changing. It's the same number that have been operating. Just from a reporting standpoint, we're just making this one-time correction so that we can give you guys a clear picture.
Understand. And I'm at the top of my head, I can go back and look whether those fees were expressed on a per institution basis, and if so, what was used as the denominator.
I don't have that data right now, but I can definitely look into that with you for you from the study.
I can also just chime in again, also to echo everything that Greg just said about how the data was done. This in particular, and the reality is different units in the Bureau have had their own workarounds. This is one of the reasons why we're really excited about Connect. But this one in particular, the licensing spreadsheet has actually always been a little different than other reports that are generated by other units. And again, kind of no system, no workaround is perfect. But I do think that the scale of the issue that Greg just reported out on is very, very unique to that one slide, and really doesn't have much applicability elsewhere.
Hi, this is Tess Craker. Just a comment/question. The application outcomes that you were sharing were extremely favorable year on year in a number of different categories. And I know you mentioned some process refinement. Is there anything additional that you attribute that significant movement to?
Well, ever since I joined the Bureau, it's been about 15 months, give or take. We've really been honing in on quality reviews and making sure that all the proper behaviors and review practices are being observed during the entire process. And as I'm sure we can all attest, as we learn the correct and proper way of doing those things, as you repeat those time frames, get reduced over time. So I think that we're nowhere close to where we want to be or where the institutions would like us to be. So we're going to continue that refinement process. But it's just a consistent checking what we're doing, making sure it's the best thing for the stakeholders in the institutions.
Oh, great job.
Thank you.
Does it seem like the workshops does it feel like that? I'm wondering, just following up on Tessa's question, kind of thinking through that, like, are the applications that are coming in like more complete or easier to process as a result of some of the workshops possibly too?
My gut instinct is that they are. We are working on collecting data surrounding applications received from workshop participants versus non. It's not something that historically has been tracked, so we're working on data modeling that. Hopefully we can report out on it at some point at a future committee meeting.
Yeah, it's great. It's nice to see the impact of your effort, that's very cool. Any other comments or questions from advisory committee members? Okay, we will move to public comment on item 5B, the licensing unit report.
All right, this is the moderator. If you would like to make a comment on agenda item 5B, you can click the raise hand icon down at the bottom of your WebEx screen, or if you're an audio only participant, you can press *3 on your device to raise your hand. You may also use the question and answer feature to indicate that you would like to make a public comment. All right, and it looks like we do have a request on WebEx from Ronald. Ronald, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device. Oh, I apologize. 1 second. Where'd you go? There you are. All right, I'll click the unmute me button.
One of the data that was presented was very helpful, but I want to put a human perspective on this data that's being presented. We've actually been waiting for 2 years for approval, and we've been working with the variety of people that have been assigned to us. What we're not seeing is adequate communication from the approval and licensing departments that we're working with. There's so many departments, but the people that we're working with, we're not seeing any proper communication from them. We're also losing talent that we had allocated to or planned to hire upon approval because it has been taking so long. And that's becoming a real problem because it's going to affect the quality of the education that we want to present in our institution when it eventually launches. And it's been what I would like to know at some point. I understand we're not allowed to ask questions, but make comments. But what I want to know is what exactly is being done to help expedite that, because what I'm seeing from the data is that this is not a unique problem to our institution, but it is something that is affecting a lot of other institutions that are applying for accreditation. And my question, what comment I want to make is, can we put in something, or can the Bureau put something in place that makes this a little bit more transparent and do something so that we can expedite this or make it fast? Because what I'm seeing from the numbers is that while improvements are being made, and I applaud the gentleman who was presenting the numbers on their team and the improvements that they're making and all that stuff, but it's just, we're not seeing any improvements on our end, right? Because we're losing the talent, we're losing the people who are going to be educating the students directly. We can't put them on hold for, years and years and years while the Bureau works through internal processes to get things completed, right? And that directly impacts our ability to operate, right? That directly affects our ability to operate. And that is a concern that I also want to raise. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the comment. Any others who would like to make public comment on item 5B?
This is the moderator. Appears there are no further requests on WebEx. Can we check with the Eldorado room to see if there's any public present?
There are no public members present.
All right.
Thank you. All right, we can close public comment for 5B. And we will move on to item 5C, which is the quality of education report.
Good morning, everyone. Before we get started on our usual report, as previously noted, I wanted to take some time to discuss institutions that fell under 9485.1 and take a look back at those institutions that were affected by Senate Bill 1247, which required institutions who were degree granting and in operation prior to 2015 to become accredited. This change, of course, would prevent students from continuing to enroll and graduate with unaccredited degrees and fundamentally increase consumer protection. The Bureau, specifically the Quality of Education Unit, was entrusted to ensure institutions navigate through this accreditation process in a timely fashion, and that California students are afforded the opportunity to gain credible degrees. So with the first slide, I just wanted to briefly go over a few of the applicable law sections. So frequently you've heard us refer to schools as 94885.1 schools. These were the schools approved prior to 2015 and per Senate Bill 1247 were needing to become accredited. So those institutions had the opportunity to reach pre-accreditation or candidacy within 2 years and in total of 5 years to become accredited. There were also extensions that could be granted. those schools were able to maintain their degree offering, so it wasn't only two. Some had multiple, numerous degree programs. Our final count with those institutions was 143. Then also with Senate Bill 1247, institutions that were approved after 2015 fell under 94885.5. Those also had 2 years to become accredited and 5 years to become, 2 years to become pre-accredited and 5 years total to become accredited, although again, extensions could be granted. However, those institutions were limited to 2 degree programs that were provisionally approved. The third group, an interesting group, we have 94885C and 94885.7. So 94885C specifically spoke to institutions who were approved by means of accreditation, and the agency themselves lost recognition. So familiar with that was ACICS, so a number of the schools fell there. The 94885.7 in part speaks to institutions who are no longer accredited, but it wasn't specifically about those approved by means of accreditation. They became no longer accredited either by their choice or if their accreditor was not recognized. These, of course, were established through Senate Bill 1433. And again, they had 2 years to become pre-accredited and 5 years to become fully accredited. Currently, we have 94 of those schools, which we consider provisionally approved degree programs. Next slide, please. So breaking down the 143 schools that fell under our 94885.1 schools, there were 14 accreditors dispersed with that group. However, I will note 27 of those institutions did not attempt to become accredited. They either did not submit their accreditation plan or surrender their degree programs by the required due date. So the top 4 accreditors chosen by those that did pursue were WASC, Western Association of Schools and Colleges, Accrediting Council for Independent Colleges and Schools, Distance Education Accrediting Commission, and the Transnational Association of Christian Colleges and Schools. Those were the top 4 choices of institutions. But again, the rest spread over 10 other accreditors as well. Next slide, please. So of the 116 that chose to pursue accreditation, the outcome was as follows. 50 of those became accredited. 17 of those surrendered their degree programs. Ultimately, 10 had their degree program suspended. 13 of those institutions became exempt or qualified to become exempt, and 26 of those institutions closed. Next slide, please. Again, of the institutions that continued to pursue accreditation, this is a breakdown of the months to those outcomes. So on average, those who became accredited took around 57 months to do so on a high end, and that obviously you include schools that received extensions, was 110 months. Schools closed on average around 40 months. And again, high would be around 77 months and the low being 15 months. Schools that went exempt usually did so around 39 months on average. And at the extreme end, it was around 71 months. For schools that surrender their degree programs as a final outcome, it was around 59 months average, as was degree program suspension. It's also around 59 months for those that continue the process. Next slide, please. For the 50 institutions that became accredited, 29 of those did within the time frame that they were given, and that would be again 5 total years to become fully accredited. On average, that was done around 37.9 months. And for those that were granted an extension, that was 21 of those schools. It took on average about 84 months to become accredited. Some takeaways that we could see from the information we had, we definitely saw communication increase with accrediting agencies in turn, so has our understanding of their process. One example of that is candidacy or pre-accreditation and what that takes. That varies per accreditor. And so, it's moved from an application and check submission versus does the accreditor have a review committee and so forth. This supports our efforts and also guiding schools as seamlessly as possible so that they don't make any changes or anything that could interrupt their process. We do see a difference with the schools that fall into our current provisional 94885.5 schools, that usually the extension request we see more on the front end, meaning to reach that pre-accreditation point, because these schools are not in operation, which was different than the 94885.1 schools who could have been in operation for years. But currently these schools have no students, they're not in operation, and there's no graduating cohorts, which can extremely impact the ability to even apply for accreditation and or to reach that candidacy. So we mostly will see that schools will request extensions more often in the beginning than we saw previously. So hopefully this gives you just a overview of those schools that we worked with. Definitely, before I move on to current stats, if there's any questions or comments, I'll do those now.
Any comments or questions from committee members?
Okay, not a problem. Next slide, please. So currently, this is a view of institutions that have been granted provisional approval for their degree programs. And I do want to clarify that that is specifically to the degree programs because many schools offer degrees and non-degrees, but the provisional approval speaks specifically to the degree program, not the institution themselves. So 22 of these schools have become accredited. 14 have closed or their approval has expired. 2 are exempt. 18 have surrendered their degrees. 12 have had their degrees suspended. And currently 26 are pursuing accreditation for a total of 94. Next slide, please. So for our total institution count, and this does not include those currently pursuing accreditation, there are 211. Again, 70 have become accredited, 21 have become exempt, 63 have closed, 41 have surrendered their programs, and 16 have had them suspended. And again, this is a total of both our 94885.1, 94885.5, 94885.7, and 94885C institutions. The last slide, please. And this is a breakdown currently of accreditor choices of those who have become accredited. Again, WASC Senior leading with 26, followed by TRACS, Transnational Association of Christian Colleges and Schools with 13. And third is DIAC for short, which is Distance Education Accrediting Commission. That concludes my presentation. If there's any questions or comments.
We'll go to committee members first if there's any questions or comments. Okay, well, thank you, Ebony. Hearing none, we'll move to public comment for item 5C, quality of education.
This is the moderator. At this time, we are on public comment for item 5C. If you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the raise hand icon, or if you're an audio only participant, you may press *3 on your device. You may also use that question and answer feature to indicate that you would like to make a public comment. All right, and it looks like we do have a request for public comment from David Neben. And David, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Morning, members of the advisory committee. My name is David Neben, representing the Institute for College Access and Success, better known as TICAS, to discuss the pending regulations on defining physical presence and limited physical presence for institutions enrolling California students as mandated by SB 1433, as was mentioned earlier in the presentation. TICAS believes that these definitions are crucial as they determine whether institutions require state authorization or merely registration, and they dictate which oversight laws apply. Most importantly, they impact where students can file complaints about their educational experiences and seek recourse if harmed. TICAS conducted an analysis of various criteria used nationwide to define physical presence, including in-person advising, advertising, exam locations, and recruitment activities. While TICAS believes that a clear definition of physical presence and no physical presence could provide California and the Bureau with a streamlined regulatory process.
I apologize. This is the moderator. It appears that this comment is not related to item 5C, which is the quality of education report. Is this for another item that's on the agenda, perhaps?
It was related to 1433, which was mentioned in this item.
I'll refer to our board chair if we want to continue, or
I think it's okay. I think that bill is referenced in this report, and so I think I understand the connection to it. So I think
I'm
it's okay.
fine with whatever the chair's determination is. If you want me to come back at a different item,
I don't think there's another better item for you to come back at. I was just scanning through, so I think it's okay to finish since you've already.
Okay. Sorry about that. Is it okay if I pick up where I left off?
Please.
Okay, so therefore we do believe that the proposed criteria for defining physical presence should encompass several key criteria such as, but not limited to, the establishment of physical locations for instruction and student support, requirements for in-person meetings and administrative offices within the state, the operation of supervised field experiences, in-person recruitment that collects student contact information to create legally binding relationships, and the maintenance of a physical mailing address or phone number. For no physical presence, we suggest narrowly crafting criteria such as offering short educational field trips for out-of-state students, maintaining electronic service devices without establishing a physical presence, having faculty or administrative personnel residing in the state while providing online instruction to non-resident students, and conducting contractual arrangements within the state. Finally, the criteria for limited physical presence should also include narrowly crafted criteria such as advertising to California students by institutions enrolling 25 or fewer, offering educational field trips lasting over 72 hours for out-of-state students, holding proctored exams in California, operating limited supervised field experiences for fewer than 10 students, and maintaining an in-state recruiter. Thank you for considering these points as you work to develop and define this critical set of regulations, and we will follow up with more detailed information and a full memorandum on our analysis and recommendations to both the Bureau and the committee members. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. Appears there are no further requests on WebEx. Can we check the El Dorado room real quick to see if there are any public comment?
There are no public members present.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you for the report. We'll move on to, oh, sorry, real quick. I just want to acknowledge that Kevin Powers, the representative from the Assembly, is here. Welcome, Kevin. And then we will move on to item 5D, which is the annual report update.
Good morning. I would like to report that the in-report unit remains fully staffed. Next slide. As we quickly approach the 2023 in-report submission deadline of December 1st, 2024, institutions have had access to submit their report since August 1st. Currently, the Bureau has received approximately 124 completed submissions, some of which have required corrections, and over 200 additional institutions have begun but not yet finalized their submissions. So there are still a lot of institutions who we are waiting for to start the process to get the reports submitted timely. To support timely completion, the in-report unit has been proactively sending reminders to all approved institutions via both mail and email. Again, a reminder for institutions to please ensure that any changes to any contact information, including physical mailing addresses, agent for service, and custodian of records is updated with the Bureau, as accurate information helps ensure smooth communication and compliance. The 2023 annual report submission must include all of the components outlined on the slide. All of those components are to be submitted through the portal, while a hard copy of the financial statements must be mailed directly to the Bureau and addressed to the annual report unit. To meet the December 1st deadline, institutions need to ensure all materials are received for a complete submission. The Bureau continues to offer school performance fact sheet workshops to help institutions understand and comply with relevant laws and regulations. These interactive sessions provide valuable information, and we strongly encourage institutions to participate. We have noted that there has been an increase in participation, so that's really great. Upcoming workshop dates are November 15th, which is this Friday, and December 20th. Institutions may register online at the Bureau's website. And then I'd like to conclude with a big thank you to the in-report team, because they are one of the smallest teams at the Bureau who are responsible for a lot of data received by the institutions. Does the committee have any questions for me? All right.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Appreciate it. Since nothing from the committee members, we can open item 5D up for public comment.
All right, this is the moderator. We are open for public comment on item 5D, annual report. If you would like to make a public comment, you can raise your hand, or if you're an audio-only participant, you can press *3 on your device to raise your hand. You may also use the Q&A feature down at the bottom of your WebEx screen. All right, and seeing no requests for public comment, can we also check the El Dorado room for any public in attendance?
There are no public members present.
All right, perfect, thank you.
Thank you very much. We can close public comment for item 5D, and we will move on to item 5E, the compliance and discipline report.
Thank you. So both our compliance and discipline units are fully staffed, which is really great. Next slide. The compliance unit conducted 87 inspections in quarter 1. At this pace, the Bureau is on track to exceed the number of inspections that were completed in fiscal year 23-24. To date, we've conducted 44 unannounced inspections and 43 announced inspections. Next slide. Staff assignments for the upcoming inspections have already been made, with the majority designated as unannounced inspections. I'll take this time to remind institutions that they must have personnel scheduled to be present at all times during their normal business hours to provide Bureau staff with access to records during those inspections. Next slide. This next slide has been newly updated to present accurate inspection results, categorized by announced and unannounced inspections. The results now clearly show the outcomes by type: no action taken, notice to comply issued, an enforcement referral, which is done for material violations identified in an inspection, and instances where an institution received a notice to comply for minor violations and an enforcement referral for potential material violations that were identified. The prior data that we had presented at previous advisory committee meetings did not fully reflect cases where institutions received both a notice to comply and an enforcement referral. And instances where no action were taken was underreported. So this new slide provides a more precise view of our inspection activities and those outcomes. Next slide. The Bureau also continues to offer compliance workshops, which are held monthly, and the next workshop is scheduled for December 11th. Next slide. In Q1, the Bureau took 6 enforcement actions following an accusation, which was filed against an approved institution. Among these actions, we issued 4 revocations. 2 were defaults where institutions did not respond to our action. 1 was through a decision by an administrative law judge, and 1 was through a settlement agreement with the institution. Additionally, we obtained a Penal Code 23 order, which imposes restrictions on an institution's operations, which is requested during a criminal legal proceeding. Next slide. In Q1, 2 enforcement actions were taken in response to a statement of issues, which are filed when an institution appeals a denied application. Of these, 1 action resulted in the revocation of the institution's approval to operate, and in the other, the Bureau granted an approval to operate after the institution successfully addressed the deficiencies identified in the initial application by providing the Bureau with satisfactory mitigation. Next slide. In Q1, the Bureau issued 1 automatic suspension. And as of September 30th, 2024, next slide, thank you. As of September 30th, 2024, the Bureau initiated accusations or statement of issues for 29 open enforcement cases. Of those 29, 16 have been filed and are now public information, currently awaiting adjudication. Next slide. And the Bureau also issued 74 citations in Q1, which also puts it on track to exceed the number of citations issued in the prior fiscal year. This slide has also been updated to accurately reflect the number of citations issued to approved institutions, as well as citations that were issued for unapproved activity. And next slide. This is a reminder that information regarding all of the Bureau's disciplinary actions is available to the public on the Bureau's website. I also want to thank both my compliance and discipline teams for their outstanding efforts in surpassing benchmarks set in previous years and really working towards the goals that we keep setting. Are there any questions from the committee?
I I just have one question on the citations issued slide. The numbers don't add up. So there's like, like there's maybe 5 to 10 citations that are not either approved citations or unapproved activity citations. Do you know what that other category is?
So the numbers will not add up because an institution may receive more than one citation in that quarter. So it's reflective of the total number of institutions cited during that time. So that's why both of the rows for quarter 1 through quarter 4 are grayed out, and you will only see a total number at the end. And that's one of the areas where we identified the data didn't reflect accurately.
That makes sense. Okay, so the top row is actual number of citations and the bottom 2 are number of institutions.
Correct.
Makes sense. Okay. Any other question? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a quick question for you, Elizabeth. Thank you for all the good work. There's a material distinction in the findings between when comparing announced and unannounced visits. There's a higher action rate on the unannounced visits. I'm curious if now or maybe in the future, you could characterize what crops up at a higher incident rate, which violations that is, or notice to comply, for example, is more common among unannounced visits compared to announced visits. And curious also if it relates somehow to your encouragement earlier to making sure that schools have appropriate staff on site to provide records. Like, is there a higher number of notice to complies on unannounced visits because they simply aren't able to produce the records in the moment, or they're more prepared in the case of an announced visit? Any color commentary now or thoughts that you might look to in the future as to what the chief difference is between the two?
We do find that in unannounced inspections that there are institutions who are not available with staff present who can assist the Bureau with access to records as required. So you will see higher violations for not allowing access to those records because there isn't personnel present. But as far as the other items, I would definitely like to look at the data so that I could present more accurate information to the committee.
Cool. And question of curiosity, if a small school or a school doesn't have somebody available to provide records, is that an enforcement referral or a notice to comply, or does it vary?
Not being available for an inspection would result in a material violation, which would be an enforcement referral, which oftentimes is addressed through a citation.
Got it. And when you say not available, does that include there isn't anybody who can find the records or has access to the records on site, or just you go and there's nobody there at all? Like the doors.
Oftentimes it's staff will arrive to an institution and there will be no one present.
And that would be
at the institution.
I'm sorry, and that would be an enforcement referral then?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Okay, we will move. Thank you, Elizabeth. We'll move on to public comment for item 5E, the compliance and discipline reports.
All right, this is the moderator. We are now open for public comment on this agenda item. If you would like to make a public comment, you can use the raise hand icon. If you're an audio only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device, or you can click the Q&A button down at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. All right, and seeing no requests for public comment, can we check with the El Dorado room to see if there's any public present?
There are no public member present.
All right, perfect.
All right, thank you. We will move on to item 5F, which is the complaint investigation report.
Thank you. Good morning, Sheriff Farron and members of the committee. My name is Daniel Rangel. I'm the chief of our investigations unit here with the Bureau. Just to start off, as I mentioned during our last advisory committee meeting, our unit is fully staffed. Therefore, our focus continues to be on training and developing our team members to ensure quality investigations. Next slide, please. Last fiscal year, we received an average of about 226 complaints per quarter. In quarter one of fiscal year 24-25, we received 288 complaints, which is an increase of about 50 complaints from last fiscal year's quarterly average. Looking at the complaints, we did receive over 50 complaints regarding loan discharges for an institution that has long since closed. However, these complaints were deemed non-jurisdictional, which you will see reflected in our next slide and also in our intake outcome slide. So the complaints received by school status so far in fiscal year 24-25, the percentage breakdown for each category is consistent with last fiscal year, apart from an increase in the non-jurisdictional complaints, as I mentioned earlier. Next slide. This is our complaints closed. In fiscal year 23-24, we completed an average of about 275 investigations per quarter. In the first quarter of 24-25, we completed 257 investigations, which is not too far off last fiscal year's pace. Next slide, please. Days to close. This is a breakdown of the days to close investigations. As I've stated at previous advisory committee meetings, we are continuously evaluating and prioritizing our pending cases to ensure we find a balance between quickly addressing urgent cases while also making significant effort to address our aging cases. As you can see, 0 to 90 days and 1 to 2 year ranges have the highest number of closures. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is an updated slide to better reflect the number of cases reviewed at intake and the case outcomes at intake. The previous version of this slide had bar graphs showing only the cases closed at intake. Now, in addition to the cases closed at intake, you can see the number of cases that were referred for investigations, which also requires a review by our intake team. So this just better reflects the work that's being reviewed by our intake staff. Next slide, please. And then this is our investigations outcomes slide. This is another updated slide. The previous version showed a breakdown of the disposition for all complaints, including those closed at intake. However, this new slide shows only the outcomes of cases that were investigated, excluding those closed at intake. These are the top allegations referred to discipline unit this quarter from investigations. Unapproved institution continues to be our top allegation. This is a breakdown of our pending caseload age. In the coming months, we expect to see these numbers shift to the left as we make a push to address our oldest cases. And then our pending caseload count. In quarter one, we hit a bit of a plateau on our pending case count. We ended the first quarter with 649 pending cases. However, we expect the number of pending cases to begin to decline again soon. As of this morning, we are at 625 pending cases. We also have about 50 final investigative reports under review by management for either closure or referral to our discipline unit. Therefore, we are confident that the number will be significantly lower by the end of quarter two. And I would like to end by saying thank you to my exceptional team. Thank you for your perseverance. Thank you for your dedication. And most of all, thank you for your support. That concludes my presentation, and I welcome any questions from the committee.
Thank you. Committee members?
Thank you, Daniel. You mentioned at the very close of your report the management review of completed investigations, which I imagine is a standard sort of last stop on the train station.
Yes.
Is that a material source of delay, or is that process typically move pretty quickly? How long are cases in that status?
Generally, it is not. I would say that there's a lot that are coming to me, and I have a significant number, and so my team is keeping me very busy. So I'm making a concerted effort to get through those cases to ensure that they get reviewed and moved along. But generally, there's not a backlog of those cases. But we have had a significant influx of cases being referred for review recently. So all of those coming in at the same time has kind of attributed to that.
Any further questions or comments?
Sorry. Hi, this is Robin Smith. Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you so much for all the information. It's really helpful to see. I think my biggest question is, what is the cause of the delays? Is it that the cases are complex and require time for investigation? Is it just the lack of personnel sufficient to really handle the cases in a timely manner? Just trying to figure out sort of what causes sort of the extensive delays in a lot of the complaints.
I think that there's various reasons. I think that we do run into a lot of complex investigations, lengthy investigations. And in addition to that, all of the work that we do kind of results in more work that is not really accounted for in the statistics, which is when we go to hearings for some of these cases, there's an extensive amount of time for preparation that goes into that's not accounted for in these statistics that I know that my team has been dealing with recently. So that's also attributed to a little bit of the plateauing. But I know that with investigations, there's kind of ebbs and flows. There's times where, we're deep in investigations, and then there's other times where the cases are all getting closed at once, and they kind of hit us for review. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now. But our focus is the quality of investigations. So we want to ensure that we do our due diligence before we close a case, before we refer it to discipline for any enforcement action. And I know that because of our focus, that kind of slows things down a bit. But with the focus on quality and consistency, as staff continue to grow and develop, it generally does lead to more efficiency, less kickback of our work, less edits and reviews when it comes to the investigations going to management. And we're beginning to see that more and more, which is why I'm confident that we'll continue to advance that pace moving forward.
And then is your unit fully staffed? You might have said that. I apologize if I missed it.
Yes, we are fully staffed as of earlier this year. So part of that is just onboarding new staff as well and getting them familiar with the nuances of investigations. Every investigation brings its own challenges. So just on the job training as they go through it, they get to experience those things and grow and get better for future investigations.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, I just want to mention, I know, Daniel, you're not the only one who did it, so I want to mention to all the staff who've presented so far, I acknowledge the kind of updated slides that you've been presenting in response to some of the questions that we've had, and I'm just really grateful for them. I think it really, that you all have been thoughtful about it, and I appreciate it. It helps us understand sort of where you're coming from better. So I just want to I know a couple of you have mentioned that you have updated slides, and I didn't acknowledge it earlier, but I do think it's made a big difference for us in understanding what y'all are looking at. So thank you for that. Okay, now we are moving on to public comment for item 5F, the complaint investigation report.
All right, this is the moderator. We are now open for public comment. If you'd like to make a public comment, you can click your raise hand icon on your WebEx screen, or if you're an audio only participant, you may raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. You may also use that question and answer feature down at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. All right, and seeing no requests for public comment, can we check with the El Dorado room to confirm if there's any public present?
There are no public members present.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. We can close out public comment. Sorry, that's right. Close out public comment. And we will move on to item 5G, which is the Office of Student Assistance and Relief Student Outreach Report. Or sorry, the Office of Student Assistance and Relief, outreach report.
Yeah, appreciate that. So Scott Valverde, Chief of OSAR, and thank you and good morning to all of you. Today, as always, I'll be reporting on the educational and closed school outreach activities conducted by my office, OSAR, during the reporting period. So in this particular case, the reporting period, of course, is the first quarter of 23-24. So I'll be talking about activities took place between July 1 and September 30th. As always, the data is provided by collecting and organizing data elements that we get from events that we participate in, and then also from our staff's own daily phone call, email, and appointment logs. And in addition to all that reported activity, data collection, aggregation, and reporting for you all and others, we also work directly on an ongoing basis with many outside partners, agencies and organizations with similar missions and shared audience, and also with almost all of the other internal units that you're hearing from at the Bureau as well, to help with student issues and the perspective of student considerations on many of the cases and situations that you're hearing from other units as well. So we all work really closely together to help students in any way possible, basically. So before we jump into the actual charts, I'd say that the overall landscape during this particular reporting quarter was fairly uneventful in terms of no large impact school closures happening, which is obviously a good thing to report on. The quarter sort of lied in between the bulk of activity related to the University of Antelope Valley closure, which I reported on in the last meeting, or captured in the minutes in the data from last meeting. And then also another large impact closure that unfortunately did happen in October. So you'll see more data and more impact and an increase in numbers, I suspect, in future reports as a result of that. So with that said, if we can move on to chart A, the first chart shows our informed choice and educational activities outreach that we do for prospective students. So in this quarter, we participated in 4 such events, and we directly connected with 181 students, as you can see there. As I said, it was a fairly uneventful quarter in terms of closures, and it also just so happens that the summertime is often a slow time for college fairs and K-12 events, veteran events, et cetera, commonly ramp up now in the fall. So we'll have more to report on here in the future as well. But we did connect with prospective students this quarter as well. In chart B are our closures. This is where we capture all of our school closures, branch closures, satellite closures, program closures, et cetera, for situations where we have sufficient information to actually develop an outreach strategy and to send these resources out via email directly to students who are impacted by closures. Unfortunately, we do spend a lot of staff time and resource searching for, working with, attempting to get that information for other closures where we're struggling to get the student contact information so that we can do that direct outreach. So that's also sort of an element, I guess, that's worth mentioning that's not captured here, that is an ongoing OSAR effort. I mean, in all closures, small or large, we do everything we can to try to get the student information and make contact so that we can do these email campaigns that often start a series of events in terms of asking students for their preferred method to contact us, whether it be a webinar, a workshop, a one-on-one appointment, or some combination thereof, or if we can just get them the resources they need via email, et cetera. So these are 5 such cases where we did have all the student contact information and sent resources via email. 164 students in this quarter. So moving on to chart C, we had only 1 workshop. This quarter, we did have 66 students attend, which was a very high percentage of that particular program roster for that school. So we're really happy with the turnout rate for that, and are working with these students impacted by the closure of the program at this particular school in real time as well, even though that event happened in July. So that's ongoing workload. And then moving on to chart D are our phone calls. I mentioned phone call, email, logs that staff do by category. Often these emails or other forms of outreach that we provide result in students obviously calling us, setting up one-on-one appointments, asking questions about their STRIF claim, borrower's defense claims, closed school loan discharges, getting their transcripts, et cetera. Some of the more common topics, as you can see, assistance with filing the STRIF application, whether that be the Connect portal, walking through the steps of the electronic version of the application, or even if they're doing the paper application, finding the documents, making sure their application is complete, where to send it, if they have sent it, checking on status of the applications, et cetera. Common ways in which we help students, both captured in chart D and chart E. If you move on to that one, both of which, again, you see sort of the numbers taper off after July, where we had that heavy impact from the Antelope Valley closure. And we expect those numbers to go back up again in October with the closure that happened at the beginning of October. But 611 such emails captured in staff's logs this quarter. It's a little under our normal quarterly pace, but I think that will go up as we move forward throughout the fiscal year. And then in chart F, one of the things we do in those email strategies at the top of the process when we do get rosters or contact information is we generally do surveys either through MS Forms or Call Loop, which is a mass text messaging system we use, where we reach out to all students, make them aware of who we are, what we do, that we're aware the school is closed and how we can help them. And then last year we began implementing this process where we really take into consideration the response to those surveys around student preference, whether they would prefer a one-on-one appointment, a webinar, or in-person workshop, or some combination thereof. And as a result, we've continued to get see more preference for students to just set up one-on-one appointments with us and go over their situation individually. We really try to encourage students to go to both workshops and do one-on-one appointments, because there's a lot of stuff that we can cover broadly in a workshop, particularly if we bring in external partners, which we commonly do, to do presentations. For example, if it's a Title IV school closure, we'll have someone from the department come and talk about closed school loan discharges, et cetera. And then that generally funnels down to more specific one-on-one questions that students may have in one-on-one appointments. So that's kind of a landscape change that continues to be consistent as we move sort of into this post-COVID mode where we're doing a lot more stuff remotely. So that pretty much completes my presentation on the data. I also just like to close the circle on one last topic that we talked about last time. I had mentioned in response to a recommendation from Melanie to contact the foster youth advocacy community, and we did so, and I reported on that initial contact last time. We have set up monthly calls with the Social Services Ombudsman's Office. We've been sharing resources and information, pre-existing content that we have, and are looking forward in the future to some actual outreach events that we may be able to participate in as well, that you'll see, I'm sure, in next year's data. So I just wanted to give you an update on that, and any questions I'd be happy to take. Thanks, Leah.
Thanks, Scott. That's great. Any questions or comments from the committee?
I just want to, this is Melanie Delgado. I just want to thank you for your continued efforts with the foster youth community. That's great. I think that's very helpful. So thank you so much for that.
This is Robin Smith. Thank you so much, Scott. One question I have for you is, have you been able to collaborate at all with the legal aids on any of the school closures in the various areas where they've happened? And the reason I ask is, as you know, the Student Loan Empowerment Network, which is funded through the DFDI, is funded legal aid statewide. And so I just want to make sure, that they're available to help take referrals, because I think they're ready and willing to help when there's a school workshop, to do webinars, to accept clients, and just want to ask if you tried that at all for any of these resources.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Robin. Definitely, for sure, in terms of staff being trained and aware of those resources and of those folks and how to get to them and make those referrals, and have made such referrals in the past. We have not had a legal aid presence at an actual in-person workshop that we've done that I can think of offhand, or if so, it's been a while. So I appreciate that as a suggestion for all the various parts that we're trying to coordinate when we are pulling those off. This closure that you're going to hear about more in our next meeting was a very abrupt, precipitous one, where the timelines were extremely short in terms of getting things put together to help students in real time. I know that's not an excuse, but it is just a fact, and a reality. A lot of times we're under a lot of pressure to get things done very quickly to help students, in particular in abrupt closures. But absolutely, in terms of our internal resource lists that we use for staff onboarding, it's reiterated at all times when that's an appropriate referral to make that referral. It just hasn't shown itself yet in terms of an actual coordinated event per se, but I appreciate that feedback for the future.
Sure. And then the other thing to mention is just, if you could somehow, you let me know a lot. So thank you very much for that. But when you know a closure is happening or about to happen, to let us know so that we can also do outreach on our end. And sometimes we know from, it's in the paper or something, but it would be helpful to open up a little bit more communication on when is one happening, where is it happening, so that we can sort of also on our end do that education and outreach.
I definitely can do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Any other comments or questions? All right, we will move on to public comment for item 5G, the OSAR report.
All right, this is the moderator, and I've opened up public comment for item 5G. If you would like to make a public comment, you can raise your hand, or if you're an audio-only participant, press *3 on your device to raise your hand. You may also use that Q&A feature to request a public comment. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment on WebEx. Just to confirm if there's any public at the El Dorado room.
There are no public members.
All right, thank you.
All right, we will close public comment and we will move on to item 5H, which is the Student Tuition Recovery Fund report.
Good morning. Excuse me. I'm Yvette Johnson with the Student Tuition Recovery Fund unit. So first I want to talk about our recruitment efforts that we've had with the STRIF unit. As I reported last quarter, at the end of last quarter, we did hire 2 new staff. We still have 1 position that we are recruiting for. So right now, the 2 staff that we did bring on board last quarter, their training is still ongoing. So in addition to processing STRIF applications, the new staff have also participated in OSAR-sponsored outreach events. We feel that it's important for them to be exposed to these events so that they're able to place a person behind the actual paperwork that they're processing. and so that they can see the people that they have an impact on. We prioritize the onboarding of these staff members so that with their work efforts, the STRIF unit will be able to improve the quality and efficiency in processing claims in future quarters. I also want to give an update on the STRIF video. Yay, it's coming soon. The goal of the video is to strengthen awareness about STRIF and how to complete the application. Our hopes are that the step-by-step video will guide students through the process and help to reduce the number of deficiencies found in STRIF applications. This tool is also an asset to assist STRIF and OSAR staff as they are working with students to complete their STRIF applications. Ultimately, we want to help students submit complete applications with all the necessary documents to process the application efficiently. I will speak more regarding the online application later. And I also want to thank those of you that previewed our video and provided your input. Is greatly appreciated. All right, so Richie, if you can move on to the next slide, please. So first, we're going to talk about the claims received. But first, I want to talk at our last advisory committee meeting, I believe it was committee member Holt that asked about the oldest claim in the STRIF queue. A review of that showed that our oldest claim is from 2021, and that is during the time we received an influx of claims for one of our large impact closure schools. So our process for working through those claims is that we actually had staff dedicated to work on those claims, as well as staff that not just to focus on those claims, but we had other staff that focused on the other claims that were coming from other school closures. Okay. And fiscal year 23-24, we had approximately 68% of our claims that were received via Connect, which is the online system, and 32% were received via paper. So for this quarter, approximately 79% of our claims were received via Connect. We are seeing that there's a continued trend for the applications to be submitted electronically, and we actually like that. As we are receiving these online applications, the initial review is finding that students either are not submitting the required documents or they are uploading their documents in the incorrect area. Examples of this are uploading receipts in various sections such as transcripts, enrollment agreements, or other areas where documents need to be uploaded. So with the video, we're hoping that it'll provide more of guidance as exactly how to upload these documents, where they should be uploaded. So with the video, we are supporting OSAR in their effort to talk to students about the availability of the online platform and to make it clear that staff from both STRIF and OSAR are available to assist students in working through online submissions. Something else with the online applications, we are making efforts to improve the intake process for STRIF applications and to bring OSAR into the equation sooner. So now upon receipt of the STRIF application, an initial review is completed, the student receives an acknowledgement letter, and if there are deficiencies, the student is notified of the deficiency. This deficiency information is now forwarded to OSAR as soon as possible so that they can begin working with the student and gathering the missing information. Okay, next slide, please. Our next slide talks about the STRIF claims that are closed this quarter. we recognize that this was a low quarter for us, and we attribute some of this to the onboarding of the new staff. As the new staff was coming on board, that took away the attention of our manager, as well as our one seasoned STRIF analyst that was helping to bring the new folks on board. But the prioritization, once again, the prioritization of the onboarding of the new staff was key to us being able to improve our efforts to process the STRIF claims. So with the new staff on board, we already see that they are making a difference and they are able to process some of the claims, and we're seeing their work. So great job to the staff that's working on those. So we approved 21 claims this quarter. 4 claims were deemed ineligible. 3 claims were denied, and 4 we were unable to contact. Next slide, please. So, excuse me, our current claims are, right now we have 111 claims to be reviewed by management. Analysts are currently working on 78 claims. We're waiting for 46 claims. We're waiting for the student to respond to us. This is after the analyst has reviewed the claim and still found that there are deficiencies. And so they had to reach out to the student to gather more information. And right now there are 608 claims in queue. Next slide, please. This is the status of the fund. Right now we have 32 claims over at the state controller's office waiting to be paid. And so far this year, we've paid out $224,453.77 in STRIF claims. And our balance as of 9/30/24 is $841,776.43. And we are still monitoring the fund balance to ensure that we're getting back down as quickly as possible to the mandate. Next slide, please. And this is the slide of our large impact closures. And we are still working on with the Corinthian claims, which include the Heald, Wildtech, and Everest. We're still working with those students. The ones that have filed borrowed defense, those are the majority of the ones that are pending. So thank you. I don't have any further questions, but I would like to thank the STRIF staff from managers on down for all the hard work that they've put in to ensure that we're able to continue processing claims, the training efforts that have gone through, the efforts that the staff are going through to help us with Connect and troubleshoot through Connect, as well as make refinements. All that work is greatly appreciated, and the staff is greatly appreciated as well. So thank you. I welcome questions from the committee.
Thanks, Yvette. Any comments or questions?
Hi, Yvette. This is Robin. Thank you so much again for all your work on helping students and for presenting the information. It's really super, super helpful. One of the questions I have for you is, I noticed that the STRIF claims pending for the Corinthian colleges folks are still over about 200. And I'm just curious about why that is, if you're still waiting for bar defense applications or the federal government to discharge loans, or if there's some other reason.
Yes, the majority of those are for us waiting for documentation from the federal government or the student just to let us know that their loans have been discharged. Because right now, from our perspective of what they presented, the loans are still out there, but we can't determine what the actual economic loss is until we know that they receive some type of relief from the federal government.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And do you reach out to those students regularly and explain to them how they can what documentation they can provide. For example, they can provide their FSA loan data and how to do that.
Yes, and actually we just did an outreach last quarter, I believe it was, where we reached out to every student that we had current contact information on and tried to reach out to them and ask them whether or not their loans have been discharged or if they had any documentation from the federal government regarding their loans. And so we did explain what they need.
Well, thank you so much. I know it's hard sometimes to get students to respond, and I really, really appreciate that you're still working with so many folks and trying to get those documents. I do know we still have clients who are waiting for discharges, so that went to a Corinthian college. So unfortunately, there are still folks out there that are waiting. Most of them should have been processed by now, so hopefully you'll hear more back from students. But thank you again for all your help with this particular population.
Thank you, and we appreciate your support.
Any other questions or comments on the STRIF report? Okay, we will open up item 5H for public comment.
This is the moderator, and we are open up for public comment. You can request public comment by raising your hand, or if you're an audio-only participant, pressing *3 on your device. And you may also use that question and answer feature down at the bottom of your WebEx screen. All right, seeing no requests for public comment, can we check with the Eldorado room to see if there are any public present?
There are no public members present.
All right, perfect.
Okay, thank you. And I am going to propose that we take a 5-minute break just so we can all stand up and get water and whatever else we need to do before moving on to the next item. So I think we can do 5 minutes. If somebody wants longer, speak now. But yeah, let's do 5 minutes. That means we'd come back at 11:33. Oh, I see Tess. Tess, you're back. Okay, great. Okay, then I think we can move on to item 6. I'm sorry, I'm going through the agenda here and just getting all the way down to where we're supposed to be. So we will start with item 6, status updates and a discussion on regulatory proposals.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Hi there. Sorry to interrupt. I think we just need to note for the record that there's not a quorum present. But as the chair, you can decide to go ahead and move forward with the discussion.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Yes, we do not have a quorum at the moment, but we are moving on to discussion items. So I am comfortable moving forward without a quorum. Thank you for that. Okay, now we will go back to item 6.
Yes, continuing on, Richie, can you go to the next slide for our regulations tracker? So this provides a summary of the current regulations that we have been working on. There have been some movements here. I'm happy to report that the signature requirements regulatory package was approved by OAL, and that was mentioned in our previous meeting. That has since been effective as of October 1st. We have also been working on the verification of exempt status. This was a small section 100 change to remove a reference to California Education Code section 94874.1, which was repealed in 2016 and since replaced with another version of 94874.1. Therefore, we removed that reference in our regulations, and that was approved by OAL on October 21st and is effective January 1st, 2025. Another large regulatory package that we have been working on is our date of closure package, which last committee meeting I had mentioned that this package was withdrawn by the Bureau to address some clarity issues in it. We resubmitted that package in September, and before that, we re-noticed the package for an additional 15-day public comment period. Resubmitted the package to the Office of Administrative Law in September and obtained their approval on October 31st. Those regulations will also become effective January 1st, 2025. In addition to the regulations that have been approved, we are continuing to work on other regulatory packages here at the Bureau, as shown on this tracker. I think we can go on to the next slide, Richie. And so for a discussion on student records, Richie, can you go to the next slide as well? Oh, okay. I know in the meeting materials, there is a memo here describing some of our experiences with student records. So as we know, the Bureau for Private Post-Secondary Education regulates private colleges operating in California, and California law requires permanent storage of certain student records, to put it simply. Schools describe how they store and maintain records when they apply for an approval to operate and provide the name and contact information for a custodian of records. If an institution closes, owners are responsible to ensure their records are maintained and available for as long as required. And these rules ultimately are so that former students have access to their educational documents. However, they're not always successful in accomplishing this, and many institutions are uncommunicative at or soon after the point of closure. The custodian of records identified may be unresponsive or say they do not have the records, and schools often deem plans to store records that have been previously made as infeasible. The consequences for students unable to access their records can be severe and long-lasting. Student transcripts are often required to secure employment, obtain licenses, or transfer credits. Some documents, like financial documents, may be necessary to navigate financial relief programs. The Bureau is considering whether and how regulatory changes might better support students' ability to access records. Regulatory gaps identified include unclear obligations to a custodian of records, as well as exactly how students are supposed to access their permanent records. The Bureau has the authority to regulate the provision of records prior to closure, yet there are no current regulations addressing this issue. Given its past experience, the Bureau is exploring the landscape to better understand how to protect students' records, including discussions with other peer private post-secondary education regulators in other states and multi-state institutions. The Bureau invites input on this important issue, and the table below in the memo outlines some challenges and discussion questions related to student records. The first general category of challenges that the Bureau experiences are thin closure plans. Institutions do not generally plan to close, and previously stated plans to maintain student records in the event of a closure often fail to come to fruition. Records are often lost or disorganized when an institution is closing, while simultaneously preparing an alternate method to maintain student records. Some questions stemming from this are what can be done in advance of a closure to ensure post-closure plans pan out, as well as how can the Bureau ensure institutional compliance with the requirement that extends beyond the time of an institution's approval to operate. Given that we have 4 distinct challenge areas, I think that would be a good place to pause if the committee has any feedback on that particular challenge area or those discussion questions posed.
What is the challenge area? I'm sorry. I'm just trying to understand what you're asking. Feedback.
Our first challenge plan or challenge is that there are thin closure plans. Institutions don't generally plan to close, and the plans that they make tend to fall through.
You know, just in my experience over the years, and I've been doing this for over 25, 30 years, I don't know that when they suddenly close, it's really hard. Usually it's because of financial issues, and as much as you would like them to have a plan, I just don't know that you ever will get to a point where those kinds of closures, you'll have a plan. So I don't know if there's a solution to that. I'm just saying, just because of the situation is often dire, and there's a reason those schools are usually failing, and that's because they're not very good at planning. So unfortunately, I don't know that there's much the Bureau can do about that, but I do think it's important to try if you can.
I'm wondering, and this is just a failure of my own information, but how frequently do the institutions have to share those plans upon closure? Like, is that just upon the application, or is that part of an annual report where they update? I'm just thinking, like, if an institution was approved even like 5 years ago, technology has changed so much that a closure plan could look different with new updated technology or data storage. And so I'm curious if there's any requirement currently to update a closure plan. And this just, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I do know that, so at the point of approval, we ask for the custodian of records and how those records will be maintained. And as part of the closure plan, when a school closes, all schools are sent a closure plan form that asks for custodian of records information.
So you ask that when they're approved?
As part of the licensing, the approval to operate application for non-accredited schools, there is a section there that lists the custodian of records, their name and contact information. And then it's asked for again if the school closes as part of the closure plan form.
And does the Bureau check on that every year and contact the custodian to make sure that they understand what obligation they're taking on, and that both parties know what their obligations are? And that I just wonder if schools let those lapse.
Yeah, I actually think that's a great segue into our second challenge area. If there's no additional comments or questions from the committee member, would I be good to move on to our second challenge area?
Yeah, I think I would just mention that for that first challenge area, that one kind of possible suggestion or solution would be to get kind of, I know it goes into the second one, but to kind of require more updated info. That maybe like Robin said, maybe the plan can't necessarily be more well thought out, but just because there is often challenges with the timing and all of that, but at least if some structure can be maintained more frequently. I think I would just say that in terms of like our feedback from the committee. I mean, I guess I would just mention, are there others who want to comment on that first challenge area?
Okay, well, it sounds like you have more to say on that, so I'll be quiet.
I have a sort of a meta bit of feedback, which is that to your larger question of whether the department or the Bureau should pursue more specific regulatory language relative to academic records, I would heartily support. I think that there should be more specific information calling it out. And it strikes me broadly as a solvable problem. That many of the issues during institutional closures, particularly economic interest issues, are very difficult, or much more difficult to solve. This is something that really is an administrative act. It's not terribly expensive to do. And the data, and Ali, as you pointed out, the technology developments over the last 10 years have made it vastly more simple to secure student records and make them available. There are third-party providers that do it regularly, like Parchment and others. Most going concern institutions are using a third-party provider for the provision of academic records. There's a small economic cost to individual users. So students, when they need their transcripts, it's actually something, as you allude to later in the memo, that they can actually fund a portion of that, which is standard and customary to pay $20 for your transcripts or something like that. And so I think this is right for solutions in regulatory language. If there's this clear, explicit standard, part of the issue here is it's just vague. or that it's part of the huge sweeping context of the closure plan, which addresses so many different issues. It does feel like this is something that could be solved with more laser specific regulatory language, that this is what's required in a document retention policy. And that needs to be updated every year with the annual report, for example, as has been mentioned here, something that's credible and current. I think that there's an opportunity to solve for this problem.
And this is Robin again, just to piggyback on Joseph. I think I agree. I think really important, as I've discussed with you, Parker, to address these issues. My concern about some of the third-party providers like Parchment and others is they only provide transcripts, and the biggest problem we have is getting the other documents, the other student records, like the student ledger, the enrollment agreement, the attendance records, things that students need in the future, especially those that would like to apply for different types of relief, like borrower defense to repayment, on their federal loans, as well as to raise defenses on their private loans. And it isn't just closed school students, it's students who attended a school that closed but went a long time ago. So I think more clarity on what documents the schools need to maintain and ensure that those are provided to a custodian or to the Bureau upon closure is really important.
Great. Thank you for the feedback. I really do appreciate the variety of perspectives, and I think it just goes to underscore the difficulty in ensuring that compliance once the institution is closed. To directly address Robin's question and go into this second point, the Bureau does, of course, ask for it in the licensing process and has the ability to verify through things like inspections, but more frequent communication or a better, more clearly explaining the standards and obligations for a custodian of records may be critical as the Bureau tackles this issue. And that leads into the second point of indefinite obligations for a custodian of records, being that the institution's custodian of records is the primary point of contact for records requests. However, sometimes the person identified as the custodian of records is unaware, unsupported, or unwilling to maintain records indefinitely for an institution which is no longer operating. This leads to some of our discussion questions. Should the Bureau further define the role and obligations of a custodian of records? Should the Bureau consider collecting this information more routinely? And what additional support can the Bureau provide to institutions or to their custodian of records, either during the time of approval or during the time of closure, to maximize the protection and permanent storage of certain student records?
So this is Robin again. So these are all such important and good questions for custodians. And, the Bureau doesn't oversee custodians. So really, but I do think defining the roles of custodians, sort of what schools have to ensure that they agree to when they are working with a custodian of records, I think the Bureau should and can do. And so part of the problem is custodians are only paid for so much time. So I think that you run into issues with custodians of, they don't want to store records and provide them in perpetuity because they haven't been paid. They're paid probably for a certain amount of time. I don't really know how it works, but it isn't going to be forever. So there does at some point needs to be provisions about transfer of the documents from the custodian to the Bureau if the custodian is ever in a place where they're unable to keep them any longer. But the other thing I think is important is to specify, who is the contact at the custodian, how the custodian has to make a process for students to request documents. The documents should be free. Let's remember, under the Federal Educational Rights and Privacy Act, students are supposed to have free access to their student records. So they shouldn't be charged for those records. Many students often cannot afford them. So that's another issue. So I think, and then having some place on the Bureau's website which you do have now, which identifies the custodians, and maybe a website or some way so that they can know how to request the documents.
Thank you. I appreciate those suggestions. Okay. If there's no other questions or concerns, a third issue area that we experience, and this may happen with smaller schools, but some of these schools may have a single individual serving in multiple roles, including the custodian of records. If that individual passes away, which we have seen happen here at the Bureau, but if that individual passes away or otherwise becomes unavailable, there is no one available to maintain the records or make them available. It becomes harder to obtain them or know what happened to them. So, stemming from that, should the Bureau require that the institution's custodian of records be someone other than the owner, or that records be maintained at separate locations?
That is an interesting situation and question. I think obviously you can have third-party custodians. I think when there's a school closure, it's probably a good idea to require a third party to take over those records. Because like you said, you don't know what's going to happen with an individual owner. And if they've already failed in their obligations to the students, their contractual obligations, their financial obligations, and closed the school, I think there's a real question about their capability of adequately maintaining and providing those records. If there's been a precipitous closure, it seems like you wouldn't want the school to keep those records and provide them because they've already failed the students and the law in many very critical ways. So I think probably it would be a good idea not to have the owner as the custodian after school closure. That said, I know it's difficult because, again, not all schools can afford to pay a third-party custodian. So in that case, sometimes the Bureau is going to have to take over those documents.
And I worry, I mean, I know you would have agreements with having having the custodian be someone other than the institution's owner, but there are kind of even what Joseph said of making sure that that third-party provider stays in operation, any privacy concerns that would come up. I mean, I think there's a little bit of, I appreciate the idea of it. I think it's there's just some things that would need to be considered along the way. And I'm not sure that it would necessarily be more reliable. I mean, it could be, I don't know, I guess. But I understand the concern with having a smaller school with just having one person. It would make, I mean, having a backup at least would be helpful. I don't know, again, if those smaller schools would be able to do that, but it does seem like, and I don't know if in regulation you could identify when somebody would be required to have a backup, or if you could choose like smaller schools that would be required to have a backup, or if all schools would be required to do it. I don't know if there's a way to differentiate, but it does seem like that could be beneficial.
Thank you, both Robin and Lee. I appreciate both of your feedback. Thank you. Before I move on to our fourth challenge that we see with student records, just want to pause and give anyone else a chance to ask questions or note their comments from the committee. Okay. And
actually, I'm just going to jump in real quick. I do think privacy issues are also a concern. We had students who attended Maranello a few years ago were getting calls from scammers claiming they owed Maranello money and they were collecting on it. And I have no idea how this scammer got their information. So I do think there are privacy concerns because if other people can get those records, they can use them to commit crimes, and it can be a real concern for students. And I don't know if that's been on your radar, but definitely something to think about.
Definitely. Thank you, Robin. That actually, I think, really, I appreciate that feedback, and I do think that it leads into our fourth, challenge area, which has been a limited bureau capacity to collect records historically. In instances where it becomes apparent that the institution is unable to maintain those records or is unwilling to provide for continuously maintaining them, but has the records in their possession still, the Bureau has stepped in to recover and store those records itself. This action ensures that relevant records are preserved. However, the Bureau has not historically seen this as a core function and is not currently set up to do this on a routine basis. So I think given the challenges with ensuring ongoing compliance with record-keeping requirements post-closure, should the Bureau consider ways to assume a more routine record collection or record-keeping role for closed schools? And then I'm just going to go through these 3 questions in this 4th area at once and allow the committee members, please feel free to address any or all of these questions. In some states, peer agencies work with a private vendor to digitize, store, and provide records to students, and this reduces the burden on the agency, but could increase costs to students. Is this an option that the Bureau should explore? And I will add onto that question with the caveat of there may be privacy concerns, as noted by Robin earlier in this discussion. As well as the law directs the Bureau to collect transcripts and other pertinent student records from institutions at the point of closure. Currently, CCR Section 71920 defines what constitutes pertinent student records for the purpose of student files. And so should a definition related to the provision of records at the time of closure be the same, or should it be narrower to obtain the documents and information that may best assist students?
So I think digitization, to the extent you can encourage schools to digitize their records as much as possible, and obviously there are parameters that you would have to require for digitization. And I know other states have some regulations about when a school wants to make all of its records electronic. It has to have certain protections and capability in place. And that may be easier for larger schools than the smaller mom and pops to do. But I think to the extent you can try to move schools towards more electronic maintenance of records, obviously it makes it much easier to maintain those records after a school closes and for the Bureau to handle those if they have to. 2, I think probably it is worth digitizing records when you do get them, when the Bureau does get them. And that is an expense, but it's probably easier in the long run than maintaining physical copies that can be hard to find. You can't search them the way you can search electronic records. So I think digitization is definitely something to consider. Probably the Bureau just needs to plan to have more of that role, because we just know there's a lot of schools that unfortunately aren't good at maintaining their records after they close. And I think you had one more question.
I think that was the provision of records, the definition.
The documents that are most important, of course, I think that you could do that. The problem is then somebody has to sort through the records to find those documents. So sometimes it's easier just to scan everything and try to at least do it by student, and then just give, you can give all those documents to the student without somebody having to go through them to say, okay, where's the enrollment agreement? Where's the student ledger? So it just depends on how much work you want to do. Of course, asking the school to do that ahead of time, maybe you can do that. But once the Bureau gets the records, I don't know that it's feasible to try to organize them all that minutely.
All right. Thank you. I do think I know that we've had discussions about the digitization of records, and that there are differences between digital records that can be sent and organized, and then paper records that may be older, may be in poorer condition, especially if they're older records. And so I know that is absolutely something that we've thought about and consider, and will continue to think about as we explore this issue. All right. Well, thank you to the committee for your time. I just want to close by saying, this memo, we're going to continue to explore this issue. And if there's any comments or questions at a later time on, these challenges that we are trying to think about, I'm very much open to hearing about that. And so thank you for your time. Thank you for what I've heard from committee members outside of this meeting already. I appreciate the support, the feedback, and I look forward to continuing to work towards a solution on this. Thank you all again for your time, and have a great rest of your day.
If I could just chime in very quickly before we go to public comment, I just certainly echo Parker's thanks for the feedback. I know he worked very hard to try to understand the issues and divide it out into distinct questions, but I know that sometimes the issue is bigger, and I want to make sure that folks do feel, if they're following up with us on feedback, there's these questions, but you might have other observations or that don't necessarily fall in these boxes. We welcome all of it. We welcome all input we can get. And to that end, I know the memo talks about how we are in touch with some institutions that operate across state lines. We're in touch with other agencies. If you all have any thoughts on who else we might want to talk to understand how they are tackling some of these issues, understand what's working or not working for them, we would just love any of that intel, because the more brains we can pick, the better off our proposal, whatever we eventually develop, will be. So thank you.
Thank you both. We will move to public comment for item 6, the regulation tracker and minimum operating standards discussion.
All right, this is the moderator. We are open up for public comment on WebEx. If you'd like to make a comment, you can raise your hand, or you can use the question and answer feature down at the bottom. And then if you're an audio only participant, you may raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, and it looks like we do have a request from Kate Zuliski. And Kate, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device. And Kate, you are unmuted.
Thank you. And can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. So my name is Kate Zulaski. I am the Corporate Director of Curriculum Design and Effectiveness for the McHale Education Corporation. We operate 2 campuses in California that are both institutionally accredited and approved by BPPE through means of accreditation. I recently was the campus director of one of those institutions, and I had a specific instance where I ran into a transcript request that got routed to the BPPE custodian of records email. And so I happened to have an experience of a currently operating school having an issue with this custodian of records contact information with BPPE being out of date. So I just wanted to share that I think it would be a good idea to ask schools to review and update their contact information more regularly. And I heard during your discussion that there was a page on the website where people could see custodian of records contact information, but I haven't been able to find that page. I only found a page for requesting transcripts for records that are in the Bureau's possession. And I believe that's the route that this particular student or former student had gone through. They made a transcript request through this page, and it did get routed to our custodian of records contact who the Bureau had on record, but that contact information was out of date. And so it did not reach our institution. It then got elevated to a complaint level status, and we had other things we had to address because of that. So I would just support the effort to update contact information, ask the schools on a more frequent basis to tell you who should be the contact person and what their contact information is. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. Appears there are no further requests on WebEx. Can we check with the El Dorado room to see if there are any public present?
There are no public members present.
All right, thank you.
Okay. We have one more agenda item, but it's a longer agenda item, and we need to take a break for staff. Probably would be end up being in the middle of it, so I think we should take the break now. Because I think trying to finish that last item in 30 minutes feels like too much. Does that sound right to you, Debbie?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we are going to take a lunch break. It is a 45-minute lunch break.
I think somewhere around that would be, I think that would probably be appropriate. It's at 12:09 now, so.
Yeah, so say 12:55 or 12:50.
That works for you.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, so we will take a break. Everyone go stand up, look out a window, get outside if you can. And we'll return at 12:55. Awesome. Okay, so we do not have a quorum, but because we are moving on with the discussion item, we are going to continue the meeting even without the quorum. So we are moving on to our final agenda item, which is agenda item 7, collaboration with the California Office of Data and Innovation to use data to support prioritization of inspections and investigations.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Elizabeth Elias, to outline our project and talk more about what it is. But I'm also just going to welcome to the meeting as well our colleagues from the Office of Data and Innovation, who I'm thrilled are able to join us and share with you what they're up to and how they helped us. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon. I'm excited to share with the committee the collaboration we've had with the Office of Data and Innovation, also known as ODI, as we work together to optimize inspections and investigations through data-driven insights. This partnership has been incredibly valuable in enhancing our processes and ensuring that the Bureau operates efficiently. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge our project partners. Next slide, please. Thank you. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge our project partners whose expertise and dedication were key to our successes. Later through the presentation, we will have Kim Hicks, the Deputy Director of Advanced Analytics and Evaluation, Rosia Mora, Senior Data Analyst, and Isa Islami, the Analytics Manager, speak a little bit more about ODI and their involvement with this collaborative project. Together, they played a crucial role in shaping the outcome of this project, and we are really proud of what we've accomplished with their support. Next slide. In this presentation, we will cover the project background, introduce the Office of Data and Innovation, highlight our engagement with the Data Science Accelerator, and discuss the impact and outcomes of this collaboration. Next slide. The Bureau is dedicated to protecting students by ensuring private post-secondary institutions across California operate in compliance with state laws and regulations. To achieve this, the Bureau conducts thorough inspections and investigations of institutions to ensure they adhere to the highest standards of educational quality, financial integrity, and consumer protection. Next slide. Every year, institutions are mandated to submit detailed and comprehensive data regarding both institutional and program performance. This data includes metrics on academic outcomes, financial stability, and provides a picture about how institutions are operating. The collected data becomes a critical tool for the Bureau in shaping its enforcement activities. Next slide. California Education Code Section 94941 directs the Bureau to consider heightened risk factors associated with institutions when developing priorities for inspections and investigations. Risk factors include financial instability, poor academic performance, enrollment, licensure rates, among others. By assessing these heightened risks, the Bureau can focus its resources on institutions that may require more immediate attention. Next slide. One of the key challenges the Bureau faces is the substantial amount of data that must be processed and analyzed. Managing and interpreting data can be overwhelming due to the sheer volume of the data collected. In addition to the volume, the data itself can often present challenges, as it is not uncommon for the data to be incomplete or inaccurate. Further, data processing has been primarily handled through manual processes, which are often time-consuming and can be prone to human error. Addressing these data challenges was crucial to improving the Bureau's enforcement capabilities. Next slide. The Bureau sought collaboration with ODI to help manage the data challenges and to deliver a consistent way to flag institutions with a high risk using a data model and tool to organize the data effectively, enabling the Bureau to prioritize institutions for inspections and investigations, and to provide a comprehensive view of institutional risk factors across the ecosystem. And I will now turn it over to Kim Hicks, to introduce the Office of Data and Innovation. And I just want to make sure we were able to elevate her, and we were. So Kim, I will turn it over to you.
Great, thank you so much, appreciate it. What I wanted to do was I really just wanted to provide everybody first with an overview of what ODI is, the Office of Data and Innovation, and then I'll hand it off to Rocio, who actually led the project and the details of the project. So we can go to the next slide. So some of you may be new to the Office of Data and Innovation, so I just wanted to kind of introduce ourselves to you. What we do is we are really laser focused on moving toward a state government that's more modern, effective, and really what we want to do is provide exceptional services to all Californians. And the way that we do business is we do business government to government. And what I mean by that is that we are here to serve other state departments. So a big part of what we do is we help departments adopt the tools and the processes that they need in order to move further toward that more modern and effective government. And when we're working with departments, we rely on best practices in user research, human-centered design, data, and analytics. We do offer services, kind of specific services to help state departments make meaningful and sustainable transformation. So we have some innovation services, and those are focused on kind of streamlining processes and improving user experiences. And we also have data services. And the data services are focused on modern data infrastructure and kind of data science applications. And so what I mean by that is really making more effective use of departments' data. So this is what we're trying to do is drive departments to becoming more data-informed decision makers. So let's go to the next slide. So the work that we're here to talk about today, this was the result of a data service we have called the Data Science Accelerator. So through the Data Science Accelerator, what we do is we collaborate closely with the department team, and then we apply analytics. And the idea is that we want to unlock new insights. We really want to discover new ways to effectively use the data that's available. So we do this very much in collaboration with the department team because they are the subject matter experts. But ultimately, we discover insights together, and then we put those insights to work. So we don't do analysis just for the sake of analysis. We want to tie it directly to improving a business process. So the ultimate goal here is really smarter and more efficient work. we end up with more effective use of staff time and resources, and then we move further toward data-driven decision-making. And so with that, we can go to the next slide. And I will hand it over to Rocio to talk about the details of the data science accelerator engagement we had with BPPE.
Thank you, Kim. Let's see, next slide, please. Awesome. So from the start of this project, we knew that we wanted to improve how annual report data was being processed. We wanted to establish a method that was consistent, that assessed institutions the same way each time. Like Liz mentioned before, there's a lot of data for each of the institutions that's coming in. This data can come in incomplete, it can also be inaccurate. And so we wanted to make sure that whatever process we created would account for all of this, that it could give the Bureau a complete picture at any point in time, but also assess risk factors in a fair and consistent manner. Next slide, please. And so this brings us to our solution. Together, we created a tool that analyzes incoming data and organizes it for immediate use to support decision-making. Thanks to the Bureau's OIS team, the tool is refreshed daily to include any new data that's submitted by the institutions. The data is then automatically processed, and the staff can easily identify risks and have a comprehensive picture of each institution. I'm going to go ahead and show you 3 of the views in the tool. Next slide, please. This isn't actual data, it's just for demonstration purposes. But there's a list of sample risk factors that's going down. And then we have 3 institutions going across. And so in this view, you can see the results of each risk factor, those that are a potential risk, and the severity of that risk. So for example, institution X has a very low financial ratio, and therefore it's coded in red. So the Bureau can quickly focus on high priority institutions, and they have context as to the why. Next slide. In the second view, staff can drill down on each institution and have access to prior years of data, allowing them to track trends over time. For instance, staff can quickly identify if an institution is expanding or closing programs over the year, along with, as shown in this data visual, any changes in student enrollment and student outcomes. Next slide. And for the third view, this view allows staff to get a sense of overall trends across the state. For example, what's the distribution of institutions by urgency? Are there some risk factors that we're seeing more than others, as well as geographic trends? Any regions with the highest sense of urgency? And I'll go ahead and hand it back to Liz to talk about the impact and outcomes of this project.
Thank you, Rocio. Thanks to our collaboration with ODI, we've already begun to see meaningful improvements in how we manage data and enforcement through this new tool. The prioritization tool provides real-time monitoring, as Rocio had indicated. When reports are submitted, the data is automatically processed, which allows the Bureau to respond more quickly to emerging issues and act before risks can escalate into larger problems. This capability will help us stay ahead of any potential challenges. One of the key benefits that we're starting to see is improved data accuracy. We now more quickly identify data errors, and so we can, with this tool, address those data errors as those reports come in, which over time will lead to higher quality data. The automation of this business process is another advantage. By reducing the time spent on the manual review process, staff can focus on institutions with the higher risk, helping us to better allocate our resources and time and improve efficiency in our enforcement efforts. All of these improvements will ultimately lead to better outcomes for students. By ensuring institutions maintain high standards, we're raising the quality of the institutions and enhancing student protection. Again, want to take a moment to express our gratitude for our partnership with ODI. Through this collaboration, we've made great strides in enhancing our approach to managing and responding to data, and we're confident it will continue to improve outcomes for both the institutions we oversee and most importantly for the students that we serve. So thank you, and that does conclude our presentation on our collaboration with ODI. Are there any questions from the committee?
I have a question. First of all, I think it's great work, and anytime you can be strategic and prioritize emphasis, I'm a big fan. My question is, does that change the timing and frequency of visits for existing institutions, or will there be additional staff to place the added emphasis as needed?
What this tool is intended is, again, it's a tool to help inform our prioritization. So although we frequently assign inspections and investigations routinely, this will help prioritize those institutions that have now been flagged as potential greater risks. And so those may then be reprioritized so that our staff are out investigating and conducting inspections for those institutions with those risk factors.
Is there a general sense of how that could impact the current inspections and audits that are underway based on receiving the feedback? I mean, just a sense of like how many are in the various categories or?
This tool is actually really new to the Bureau, so we're learning as we move forward with utilizing this tool. So I think it's a little too early to say exactly how it will impact our current processes, but we hope that this tool will provide us the insight that we really need to better get out there and inspect institutions with the higher risks.
No, I think it's great. And will the advisory committee receive roll-ups? You know, if this were to come fully to fruition, will we receive roll-ups of the data and the findings, not by school name, but by categories, similar to how we receive complaints in the categories and so forth?
Future reports on this tool and how the Bureau is utilizing it, we will definitely be able to provide some insights depending on the information that we've received. But it may take some time while we start to really utilize the tool to get those data insights that would be valuable to the advisory committee.
Okay, fair enough. You can tell I like it, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Elizabeth, how far back did you go in the data set? Do you have, so when's the original data from the annual reports, the oldest data that was imported into the tool?
This tool uses data for the current year, and I believe 3 years prior. So as the years progress, it will be the current year plus 3 years of prior data.
I was curious if, well, a related question. So the risk factors were identified based on institutional knowledge and anecdotal feedback, or was there a modeling done in the past that tied specific data variables to, for example, imminent closures, or how did you identify what the risk factors were? Was that empirical or anecdotal?
The risk factors are actually defined in the California Education Code under 94941, and that was the foundation that established the criteria that we determined with this prioritization tool.
Okay, yeah, I'm curious in the statutory background how those risk factors were identified there. You would have technically now the ability with that data, although it would be labor intensive probably, but if you went back 10 years with annual reports data, you would know which schools have closed, for example, which had observed violations over time, to try to identify directly from the data which risk factors tied out in that way.
I don't believe that we have information going that far back, but if we did, potentially that is some insight that we could see, at least the data not in this tool electronically, as we've now have institutions report through the portal.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah, that's right. Because they were physical. Like I remember years ago, we gave out those reports. Yes, there's no database. Yeah, understood. Got it. I echo what Tess was saying. It's a super valuable tool. I'm curious how it will, over time, it definitely will direct efforts in a more efficient way, which is great. I'm not certain that the Bureau had been meeting its mandate in terms of number of visits per institution inspections. And so there could be a conflict between knowing where we should be going, but having a legislative mandate to do a required number of inspections per institution, historically. I don't think we're measuring that currently to confirm that each school gets the mandated number of inspections.
For compliance inspections, we are currently getting really close, if not there, with our mandate based on the volume of inspections that we're completing. But what this tool will help us with is add additional inspections where we see additional increased risks. I forecast that we will be meeting our mandate as currently directed, but allowing us more opportunity to focus on institutions with greater risk.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely more efficient application of resources and very promising tool.
Hi, this is Robin Smith. I am just so happy to see this. I just want to thank you all. I know it's been just for the background for the advisory board. This law, there was a law passed, it's been quite a while, and I don't know how long, maybe at least 10 years. There was a provision passed that is in the statute that requires the Bureau to track these indicia and to use them to target their investigations in unannounced inspections. So this has been a really long time in coming and is incredibly important for consumer protection purposes. And the risk factors in the law were based on what experts and history shows are sort of the most common factors that lead to school closures and identify schools that may be committing fraud, misrepresentation, sort of those kinds of violations. So that's where the indicia came from. They came from the statute, and that's sort of how they were put in the statute, or that was the idea underlying it. But I think you're right. Once this tool starts getting used, we'll be able to tell if there is any correlation, if there are other factors. And that also I wanted to ask, is there capability in what you're building out to add other criteria as you learn from sort of whether the criteria you have are helpful, whether there might be other criteria that you might want to add? Is that a capability of this program?
Yes, it is a capability of the program to analyze the trends over time and to use the data that we receive to kind of look at the data and see where the higher risks are within those trends.
Terrific. Thank you so much. I think also what was mentioned, I think it's in the law, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this also would help not only for unannounced inspections, but for the borough to prioritize complaints. So if they see a lot of complaints and they look at the data and the data indicates this may be a problem school, they can prioritize those complaints. So that's another reason for this data and how it could be used.
Yes, the data is not just for inspections, but it is also for our complaint and investigations as well. And we're also looking at other ways that we could use information that we will see in this tool for other areas of our program, like review of renewal applications or, other areas that this data would support us being able to identify any kind of potential risks with these institutions.
I'm wondering too, if this, just thinking back to the public comment that was made at the beginning about asking for additional information about, for instance, like the Cal grants that the institutions are receiving, if there's, that this kind of tool could help create reporting and kind of a better understanding overall. of the different characteristics of the institutions, because it's coming from the annual reports, right, which has so much information in it. So I think there's the potential is there to use it. I mean, I think that the purpose at the moment makes a ton of sense, but I appreciate that the Bureau is thinking about other ways that the data could be used to kind of be more efficient and effective in how they are working with the institutions. Other comments or questions from the advisory committee?
You made in the mentioning of complaints, Elizabeth, are the number of complaints lodged against an institution one of the variables that is put in, or is it only derivative of the annual report data set?
The information in the prioritization tool is only data from the annual report. However, our complaint investigations unit has their own tool, and they're using the information here to drive how they prioritize their complaints and their investigations.
Maybe something to consider is looking at in terms of a why, in addition to that data set, would be the number of complaints or per capita complaints, how many complaints, per 1,000 students are served or something like that would be another, and you see a particular on a trend line, right? Like if you see a spike in trends. But to your point, the investigation unit is probably already, or the complaints and investigations is probably already observing that separately.
They're currently doing that now.
Yes.
As a practice, but I think what this information will do is allow them to look at currently what they're looking at for their prioritization and use this as an additional metric to make a better informed decision as they move forward with prioritizing investigations.
And there is no expression in the annual report of the number of complaints that an institution has received, right? Because there is a sense where the two could run in parallel to each other, where they would benefit from actually being completed, right? Like this tool would be better if there was a count for how many complaints a school had. So you'd have two departments that have the information, but marrying them in a single data set would be helpful.
I think I missed the first part of your question. Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So you have a complaints and investigation unit that knows how many complaints a school is getting and can look for trends. You separately have a data tool that's pointed at the annual reports. The annual report data does not include how many complaints were made by against the institution, right? And so it could see a beneficial marriage of the two, right? Like if this data set had it, which would be very easy to do, add here's all the data from the annual report, but also that school had X complaints over the previous year, expressed like as complaints per 1,000 students served, right?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely see some ways that we could use it and tie our data sets together. And hopefully in the future, we can continue to look at how we receive our complaints, the tool we use there, this tool, and how we can maybe marry them together.
Yeah, and ideas for the future, I apologize to take away from the celebration of the present. Like this is an amazing tool. It's a huge step forward. So just more ideas, like anything else. Momentum is always good.
We run on momentum over here. Always trying to improve.
More questions or comments? Seems like we covered it. This is really cool. It's very exciting, and I really appreciate y'all bringing it to us and previewing it and letting us kind of share in the momentum as you roll it out. So we'll happily hear more about how it's going, hopefully at future meetings, and kind of get updates as part of the reporting that you all are doing. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are now moving to public comment on item number 7, which is the collaboration with the Office of Data. I'm going to forget the last part. Hold on. Data and Innovation.
This is the moderator, and we are open for public comment. You can request public comment by clicking the hand icon on WebEx, or if you're an audio-only participant, pressing *3 on your device. You may also use the question and answer feature down at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen to indicate you would like to make a comment. All right, and seeing no requests, can we check with the El Dorado room if there are any public comment?
There are no public members present.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll close public comment for that, and we will move on to agenda item number 8, which is future agenda items. Does any committee members have anything they would like to suggest as future agenda items?
Just updates on that tool.
Yeah, agreed.
I think that trying to formulate how we would address this in the agenda, but it's encouraging to see ODI and the Bureau collaborating to leverage data to improve site visits. One of the chief issues that the Bureau has had historically is staying current with complaints. And so if you look at the backlog of complaints, in what way could we leverage data or AI, maybe it's, although I'm, I've had enough AI presentations to
caution. It's okay. It could be optimistically cautious or however, yeah.
Yeah, some sort of how do we leverage technology to improve the efficiency of complaint investigation and resolution.
Yeah. It feels like maybe, well, I don't know. It feels like possibly that conversation could come both through the kind of the complaint and investigation report, but also possibly through the IT system project, because I think we'll see a lot of updates and changes once the Bureau is able to get that going, hopefully in early 2025. Any other suggestions for future agenda items? Okay. Moving to public comment on item number 8, future agenda items.
All right, this is the moderator. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, you can click the raise hand icon, or if you're an audio-only participant, you can press *3 on your device. You may also use the question and answer feature down at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. All right, and seeing no request for public comment, can we check with the El Dorado room?
There are no public members present.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to future meeting dates, we have the meeting dates for 2025 on the calendar. I think the initial ask is just if committee members could take a look and note now if you know of known conflicts. Otherwise, Richie usually, confirms or shares out if there needs to be changes, a while before the meeting, but just wanted to get them on folks' calendars now. There is the possibility of having that August meeting be in person. We had planned for that this year, as y'all remember, but because of budget issues, we ended up keeping it virtual. So I think that will remain to be seen as we go through the budget process in the first half of 2025. But you can mark that as a possibility of a trip to Sacramento. For those of you not already there, of course. Okay, any comments or questions from committee members now about those meeting dates? Okay, great. They're in the materials, so you can add them into your calendar. I guess we'll move to public comment on agenda item 9, which is our future meeting dates.
This is the moderator. We are open for public comment on agenda item 9. If you would like to make a comment, you may raise your hand or press *3 on your device if you're an audio-only participant. You may also click the Q&A icon down at the bottom of your WebEx screen. All right, and see no requests for public comment. Can we check with the El Dorado room real quick?
There are no public members.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We already covered agenda item 10, which was the elections. So we are on to adjournment. Thank you all for bearing with us and for a really great presentation from the Bureau today. I think it was really just feels like there's so much progress that's been made, and it's been really fun to be part of it over the last few years. So thanks for all the work that all of you are doing, and thanks to the committee members for all their thoughtful questions and comments. It makes this a much more fun and engaging meeting when we all get to share our ideas. So appreciate all of you, and I hope you all have a good rest of your day and a good rest of the year, and we'll see you in February.
Thank you.
Thank you all. We are adjourned.
Thank you all.